Hi guys, sorry I couldn't be in class today, but I figured this would be the next best thing. I'm here to tell you about your next design project. This project in engineering prototypes is going to be based on creating a new design. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at product and industrial design, and we're going to see how that can influence a design and how that helps a designer come up with a design or a new product, and maybe some of the steps that they might have to go through to get that to manufacture. So first off, product design is a process of creating a new product to be sold by a business to its customers. So this is where a designer or inventor are going to conceptualize ideas. They're going to turn them into inventions and products. This is from the ground up, so to speak, where you are starting with nothing or just an idea, and then you are building that, coming up with a workable prototype, and then creating something and getting it out to the public. Oftentimes, this is just the first step in this process, and where it's going to be created multiple times, and after years of generations, it's going to have different types of things attached to it. It's going to change, it's going to morph a little bit. You can sometimes use this product design to refer to digital products like programs, apps, or websites, and I'm sure that you have experienced before in your life where you've seen a release of one app and then it goes through an update, and that next one is 0.125, and then the next one after that is 0.2, and then the next one is 0.3. So there's these updatings that go along with it. But that kind of leads into our next topic, which is industrial design. And industrial design is a process of design that's applied to a product that are to be manufactured through techniques of mass production, meaning that once a product is going to market, and after it may have already gone through one full round of manufacture, it's possible that the design can come through again and be redesigned or replicated or modified in a way that makes that object more desirable. Either it looks sleeker, it looks smaller, it looks newer, but it does mostly the same thing. That's different from the product design where the iterations are constantly trying to make it better. Industrial design is also trying to make things better, but it's more or less centered on the design of the object itself, where you're not changing the fundamental purpose of the thing. You're changing the design to make it look better or make it work sleeker or something like that. So all mass-produced objects go through some sort of industrial design. Some objects are standing out as having exceptionally great industrial design, meaning that they become iconic. So if we look at a couple of things here, in the top left, this guy up here is the KitchenAid mixer. Now they have been making this style of stand mixer for probably close to 100 years at this point. I believe that one of the earliest ones are from the 20s and 30s, and it looks very, very similar. In fact, KitchenAid, the brand that makes this, is very proud of the fact that the implements that go onto this mixer, not just the things that fit in the bowl, but the things that go attached onto the end of it here, like pasta makers, and they have sausage makers and all sorts of other implements that fit into this slot up top there, that they are all reverse compatible. You can buy one mixer from the off the shelf at a store right now, and you can use an implement that maybe your grandmother owned from the 50s. So that's an example of an iconic industrial design, something that lasts the ages. We'll come down here to the VW Beetle. It was at the time, I think, the most mass-produced vehicle on the planet. There was millions and millions of this exact body style sold. They changed tiny little things just to make it slightly changed over the years, and experts can tell you that things like body fairings or bumpers or headlights or tail or wind mirrors or something like that they changed throughout the years, but basically the design stayed the same. The Fender Stratocaster is an example of one type of a guitar that has a very lasting image to it. Originally designed in like the 60s, and has this iconic shape to it that other guitars try and match, but Fender is the original, and they still make this model, and you can go buy one off the shelf now. And then there's this thing up here, the Eames fiberglass armchair. Eames is a designer that designed furniture, and Eames chairs are very, very sought after. And not only are the original pieces, the actual chairs from the 60s, 70s, very, very valuable and worth a lot of money, but they are also an example of a great design that other people have mimicked and have taken iterations from and tried to make their own version of it. But as they say often, there's only one original. So the Eames armchair, there's a lot of different types of armchairs. This is one version of it. You'll see them pop up as fakes or knockoffs, but the ones that are true and original are very expensive. And the one that you guys are probably most familiar with are these Apple products here. To be honest, there's some debate whether or not Apple had the design first and then Samsung copied it or whatnot, but you basically get this sense, though, that these rectangles, these squares that they make, have a very lasting design to them, where they will stand the test of time, at least in the sense that most of our devices, these devices pictured here, some of these are already 10 or 15 years old, and some of them you look like they look very similar to the things that you can buy off the shelf right now. So again, examples of industrial design that stands the test of time and that can go for a couple of different design ages, whether that be 10 to 15 years in the case of this, whether it be 40 or 50 years in the case of the Beetle, the Stratocaster, or the armchair, or even close to 100 years for something as utilitarian as a mixer. So what's involved with designing a product? It's taking something from its existing state and moving it to a preferred state. And that's a very deep sentence or statement to make, because it's not trivial. It's something that is very difficult to do and to do right. It's not just taking something and changing the color of it because that's, oh, I prefer this color over that color, which aesthetics is a part of it, designing a product, but it's taking it from an existing state and moving it to a preferred state, meaning that you should try and fundamentally make it better as you are trying to design this product, move it through its stages. So I did mention aesthetics comes into play with that and designing a product. And then user interface, that can mean something that is literally digital, that you are using a mouse or a keyboard or a touchpad to interface with the electronics, but it can also mean something physical, which is the next little bullet down there, ergonomics. The word ergonomics, if broken down, ergon is Latin for work, and nomi means natural laws. And so if you take that idea and think about working with natural laws, it's kind of the way that humans interact with their environment, with their nature. And that can go back up to that user interface. And when you think about ergonomics, it shouldn't just be your chair, although that, spoiler alert, that's going to come on the next slide. but it should also be how you interact with everything in your environment. Think about the next time that you have to grab a door handle and open the door. How is that handle interacting with your hand? It's designed for your hand. So there are many, many things in our designed world that have been designed that way for a specific reason, not just for looks or for flair or something like that, but in order to actually work with the human body. So like I said, oftentimes the very first thing that people think about when ergonomics is thrown around, the word ergonomics is thrown around, is thinking about office chairs and computer chairs and desks and everything. And I'm certain that even as you are watching this video, everybody, I'm sure, looks exactly like what they see in this picture over on the left-hand side, right? Right? Am I right? So what you should ideally be doing is sitting in a manner where you are looking straight onto the screen, or at least towards the top of the screen, with maybe a tiny little bit of tilt down, as sort of showcased in this picture over here on the right. And your seat is set in a way that your back can be straight, that your knees are bent at a 90-degree angle, your arms are bent at a 90-degree angle to meet onto the keyboard so that you can type easily, and all that different stuff. Now, most of you are probably accessing this with a trackpad, but when you use a mouse the next time, think about how you're grabbing the mouse. Is it comfortable for you, or is it done the right way? Another example of this, which I don't have a picture for, but it's a visual thing and I want you to think about it, is the ergonomics of a car driver's seat. So many of you are either driving right now, have been driving for a little while, or just about to start driving and getting your driver's license and everything. And when you approach the car, you have a door handle. We already mentioned that your door handles on any door, whether it be an interior door or the car door, are designed to work with a human hand. And then you open the door and you sort of swing your legs into the car, and then you sit behind the driver's wheel, and after moving some slight adjustments in the seat to make sure that you're positioned in the right place to be able to reach the pedals and reach the steering wheel and everything, you have access to all of the controls that will allow you to control the car. And that's taking into account things like opposable thumbs, where you can grip the steering wheel, and quite literally having 2 feet to be able to operate the gas, the brake, and quite possibly the clutch if you have a stick shift car, using your hand to drive the stick shift and moving that all around, and operating things like turn signals and windshield wipers and all that other good stuff that you get inside of a car. And now, just for a visual, for a thought experiment, think about a dog trying to sit in that car. I'm going to let that sink in for a little bit. Think about a dog trying to sit in your driver's seat and operate a car, let alone the fact that that only happens in Air Bud movies, where a dog is actually able to operate a car. But think about the orientation of a dog's body. Even a really large dog is not set up in the same way to be able to reach a steering wheel, reach pedals, reach things around in the cockpit of the car. Everything is designed around the human body. And now we take that idea of a car, and we're going to move on to a podcast that I listen to, which is called 99% Invisible. And I'm going to take you out to the website in just a couple of seconds here. But the assignment on this little page of our PowerPoint is to visit the website and read the article about how various designs were based on an average size of men from a particular time. And if you're more intrigued, I'll show you where there's a TEDx talk by Todd Rose that's at the bottom of the page. And also, the actual podcast itself, 99% Invisible, is a great podcast and has really, really neat insights on design, the designed world. The basic idea of the title 99% Invisible is that of the things that we deal with and interact with on a daily basis, 99% of that has been designed in some way, but we don't think about the design. The desk that you're sitting at right now, the computer that you're staring at, all of that has had some sort of iterative design process, but we sort of just take that for granted as this is the next best thing, the next newest thing. So if we visit the On Average podcast page here, I want you to read down through this article, and it talks about how early on the idea of an average man was a factor for creating things like what am I trying to say here? Uniforms, that's the word I'm looking for. The uniforms for the Union and Confederate Army, and then it goes into talking about the cockpits in airplanes, about how they were designed around the average physical dimensions of male pilots. And so there's some really neat information here. It's a very quick read to just read down through these couple of paragraphs. And like I said before, this YouTube video here is from Todd Rose, TEDx talk, and it's really great. Talks about average and how nobody is really average. And then at the very top of the page is the actual link to the podcast that you can listen to if you so desire. That's not part of the actual requirements of this assignment, but I would encourage you to go back and listen if you're so intrigued. So, moving on. What is your actual design challenge? This is where we get to the meat and potatoes of the whole thing. I want you to utilize product design, which would be to invent something brand new, or industrial design, which would be refine something that's already in existence, and to create a new thing. And I'm purposefully using that word thing because it is going to be such a broad description of all the stuff that we do, of all of the different participants in this class. We are going to come up with some really, really wide varying things. When I get back into class, we're going to discuss a couple of things that we can do with materials, but any materials may be utilized to create a physical mock-up or prototype of this new thing. I do want to stress the idea that in some cases, you are just going to be creating a physical mock-up, meaning it does not have to function. It does not have to do what you expect it to actually do. However, some of you may want to go the extra little bit of a mile and try and create an actual prototype, a working version of this thing that you want to create. There are many, many materials that are cheap, free, or accessible to you in this class, like cardboard, green florist's foam, which is something I'll explain when I come back, upcycled products, 3D printing, CNC machining, and if we happen to get a laser cutter in the next couple of days or weeks that this is still operating, something that might be able to be laser cut as well. You are going to need to spend the rest of this period working on preliminary sketches, doing some research, and trying to figure out what you would like to do. And I will approve these sketches, these ideas, before you move on to any kind of actual construction. So don't think that you should immediately start building something. I would like to okay your idea before we move on. So a couple of tips and tricks that I can offer you. First, if you are completely for a lack of ideas, think about 2 or more existing products that have never been previously combined. You can do Google searches and just try and put 2 things together. There should be a reasoning behind these things, but things like putting dental floss at the end of a toothbrush. All right, so it's on an all-in-one. Maybe it's a travel version. Maybe it's something that is aimed at getting kids to to floss their teeth more often, so they put it right on the end of the toothbrush. Maybe it's just combining two things that you have never seen combined before, but in a creative and purposeful way. You can also modify an existing product to make it more ergonomic, simpler to use, or I have the word handy capable there, meaning that there is a large segment of a product being sold that aims at helping an older generation or helping people that have physical disabilities of some kind try and continue to live a purposeful and easy to access life. So things like jar openers and things like little handy gadgets to do this or do that. And that sort of leads us into the as seen on TV paradigm. So if you think about all that stuff that you see on these as seen on TV commercials, and I'm talking about the really goofy stuff that you think there's no person on the planet that would really find a good use for that stuff, but maybe you have some of it in your house already. Who knows? Something as simple as like the clapper, where you turn on a light by just clapping your hands. So if you can think of some sort of an idea that grabs on that, hey, wouldn't it be cool if type of an idea, that's what I'm talking about with this as seen on TV paradigm. Like the idea of something that just is kind of it might be a little goofy, it might look a little silly, or it might be a little silly to use, but at least it might have kind of like a one little niche use that might be something that sells, basically. I want you to avoid the black box problems. And what I mean by that is that there's this idea, it's called the black box, that you put some things into a box and then some type of magic occurs and then you get something else out. And we don't want to do that in our product here, because I want to be able to see the design working. So with that in mind, the last bullet point there is the product has to be tangible. It's not just going to be a piece of software. I want you to get away from the idea of, well, I'm going to make an app for my phone that does this, or I'm going to just add a graphing calculator onto the back of my phone, because that, like those two things, you could easily accomplish that graphing calculator idea with a very purposeful app, or an accessory that goes onto the phone that helps you do something that is also achievable by another piece of product software, and you're just saying that by putting it on the phone it makes it more convenient. That's not what we're looking for. We're looking for something that is a little bit more innovative, and saying that it's going to be something that's brand new, or it's a redesign of something that exists already. So finally, Google your idea. Once you come up with that first idea, just throw it into Google and see if it exists already. If it already exists, you're going to throw that idea out and start over. There are many, many times when the first idea that you come to mind might seem like, oh, that's a really great idea. And then as soon as you Google it, it's like there's 10 different versions of that for sale right now on Amazon or from Alibaba or something like that. And that's really the purpose of this project, is to try and create something that is brand new. So I have a quote on here. It says, "No plan of operations reaches with any certainty beyond the first encounter with the enemy's main force." What that means is that no plan survives first contact with the enemy, or you need to be ready to come up with multiple ideas, because your first idea is probably not going to work. So I just have a lovely picture of the as seen on TV bread gloves. Make anything into a sandwich. So think about what you can do, come up with some good ideas. You might be coming up with 3 or 4 ideas, and then come to me and try and figure out which is the best one, which is going to be the easiest one to create, which one is going to be the easiest one to actually build, and we can work on it from there. So I wish you luck in coming up with ideas and sketches, and I'll look forward to seeing some things show up on Friday. Have a great day. See you later.